Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
It's often been said one of the most powerful things that you can do if you want to really move your life forward, heal from certain things, is forgiveness. And I'm not just making that up. There's tons of research that backs that up. Even looking at biorhythms on the brain after somebody has kind of purged the situation using forgiveness, how it's made that positive impact on people. We're going to talk about that today, how you deal with forgiveness. I know it's not easy, but we're going to help you with that. She is a transformational life coach, a functional medicine health coach, and she's back with us from Health Life Solutions. Martha Smythe on the program. Martha, welcome back. How you doing?
Hello, I'm doing just great.
Yeah, great to have you back here. And it's when we say forgiveness, it goes in all different areas. It could be forgiving somebody for something they did, forgiving yourself for whatever it may be. But I do want to say, because it's not easy sometimes to forgive, that doesn't mean that you're condoning what somebody did. You're doing it for yourself to feel better and kind of move forward, right?
Totally.
How do we do it? I'll share some stuff with you in a moment, but how do we, let's go hypothetical here. Let's say somebody's done something that was really traumatic. Let's put it there. You've dealt with it for some time. You can't even imagine yourself forgiving this person. You wallow in it maybe on a daily basis. Maybe you take the victim mode. Not saying you should. Probably the worst thing you should do, but it is what it is. How do you get to that point of forgiveness?
Well, it's such a good question. In fact, I think all the spiritual and religious paths in our history has dealt with that. You know, they have different ways of forgiving and talk about the importance of forgiving. And I think the reason that subject comes up so much is because it is difficult and because it's so powerful. The unforgiveness has a powerful negative effect on your, mind, body, and spirit. And forgiveness has a very powerful and transformational effect on you. And so, how do you do it? I say you find the practice or the means that resonates with you the best, and you try that. I know of several. One that I personally I practice a lot is I love Ho'oponopono because it's a Hawaiian prayer. I don't know if you've heard of Ho'oponopono.
Mm-mm.
It's just one way, and anybody can look who's listening can look that up on YouTube. It's Ho apostrophe Oponopono, just the way it sounds, Pono, and
Mm.
you'll find a lot of stuff on it, and it's a prayer of reconciliation and forgiveness that it comes out of the Hawaiian tradition. And basically, it's just one of their prayers, but it's, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And it's like what you were saying about, well, if you forgive someone, are you somehow okay with what they did? And obviously not. So you're forgiving them for yourself because you want to release this kind of stranglehold that it has on your heart and free up that love and that energy that's there for your vital life resources and so forth. And so that you have that love to give to the world. That kind of resentment really can sour your heart and your ability to love and affect your health. So the reason I love the Ho'oponopono so much is because inherent in it is this understanding. It's that place that we were talking about last time. Remember, we were talking about there's the collective and there's the place like the holographic image that we're all part of a hologram, that we're all parts of a whole. So there are places in our invisible realms, so to speak, where, I'm you, you're me, we share something, and there is almost like a collective responsibility as well. And the Ho'oponopono is something that you can actually do about a situation. So you're basically saying, I'm sorry for my part. And it may not be an active part that you're playing, in this world, in this life, but you are a part because you're part of everything. So it's like you're saying, I'm sorry for that. Please forgive me. And you're not really asking an external source to forgive you because you're everything. So you're really forgiving yourself. And the thank you is the gratitude. I love you. It's the love. And those two, if you and you really feel it, those two are very positive, heartfelt feelings. So the combination of that and is very powerful. And I could give examples, but I don't want to take too much time because we don't have all that much time. But if you were to look into it, you would see that it was used and is still used as a very powerful means of healing. So
So
that's one way.
yeah, I was just
And
going
then
to say
there's,
the other way.
huh?
I was just going to ask the other way.
Well, it isn't like there is the other way because there's so many ways. But one way that I learned in my training, which I really loved, was let's say you have someone in particular that you want to forgive and you just can't because you're so mad at them and you just like they're total jerks. You just cannot bring yourself to forgive them.
Hmm.
What you do is you call up in your mind and in your heart someone that you really, really love. It can even be your pet dog, but it can be someone you really love. And so you generate this loving feeling towards this person. And then you just slip that person in. It's like almost sliding the envelope under the door, and you just slip them into your heart and you let them be in that loving space that you've just generated towards someone else. And you may need to do this over and over again, but there will come a time when you can actually feel that you are indeed forgiving them. That's like you're kind of in a way tricking yourself into forgiving, but you're very aware of it. So it's a very empowering thing to do as well. And it works. And many people have done that. And then there's the Buddhist loving kindness prayer. There are different ways to forgive, but I think that the first step is if you've taken the first step that you recognize forgiveness is freeing yourself and you have an intention to do it, you'll find the right way and you will succeed.
I love that idea. It's almost like I envision you create this big orb in front of you of love, the love orb, and it was created using somebody else's likeness. And now you've had this big bubble in front of you, and now you just put that person in that you need to forgive
Mhm.
and just let them exist in that space. And again, like you said, it will take time. You might have to do it a number of times, maybe a lot of times, where you finally feel that they fit that space, and now you can move past. Take the orb now and go, put it that way. Let it float away. They're encased in love, and I set you free, and you're on. Um, I did hypnotherapy for
Oh,
forgiveness.
tell me about it.
Um, Impactful. I think it was helpful. Unfortunately, there was a tech issue, so it didn't go as long as it should have gone, but it definitely was enough. And basically, I see the person I was to forgive in front of me. Um, and if I remember correctly, there was almost a glass in between. Maybe that's for protection. I don't know. Where you're speaking, you're having a conversation with that person, and that all took place during the hypnotherapy. Uh, Very interesting. And it's almost like what you're saying in your mind, your subconscious, you're creating something. So based on the practitioner's thoughts, I created a situation where I'm face to face with that person and need to confront it and say certain things, probably very similar to the Hawaiian prayer that you said, where basically, I forgive you, I wish you well, God bless, love you, blah, 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 and on. And you don't have to say all of those. It's whatever you felt comfortable with during the hypnotherapy. But just one other way of, using your subconscious mind to accept a situation, right?
And it worked for you, meaning you can really feel the difference
I
towards this
feel
person.
I feel a difference. Yeah. Yeah. I could probably do it again. Um, there's still pieces floating out there, but I think it was impactful. But that's not to say what you're suggesting won't work. I really think it will, because I totally got what you said in that visualization of finding that situation where there is total love, just unconditional, just It's the best. And it could be a dog. Doesn't matter. And then putting that person in that situation. You wouldn't normally do that if it's somebody that did you wrong. You're not going to think of them in that way. It's almost as if you're forcing them in, but once they're in, it starts feeling more comfortable, maybe a little bit lighter, in that situation. What about
Yeah.
forgiving yourself? What about if somebody has to do that? Uh, I,
About forgiving yourself.
yeah, yeah. How would you do that?
Okay.
Suggestion.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, you could literally use that method.
I was think, I was
That
thinking
method
that.
has worked for a lot of people, but I actually, that's not what I use. I'm just saying that because I've seen it work for a lot of people. Um, I think it's excellent. There's many paths to the same goal. Um, I will say for yourself, again, just right now, I kind of go through things in a way, but it's like lately, the whole Ponopono has been very powerful for me and that is actually, uh, you think you're forgiving someone else, but you really are forgiving yourself in that, because in that prayer, it starts with the premise that we are all connected. And so we're in that space where we're all in one big container as one with this connection. And you're saying, I'm sorry for my part, because it's like I'm recognizing that you are me and I'm you. So in the prayer, it's all about me anyway. You're doing it all within yourself,
Mm,
about yourself, and you're releasing yourself. Like we just said, this is all about freeing yourself. And it really is about you, even though you think it's about somebody else.
yeah.
But it's the way that you perceived that person. For instance, if it touched you in such a hard way where you can't feel any compassion or empathy for the person, but if you were to go deep into what was going on with them, you actually might find that you can really forgive them because you have a lot of compassion for them because you understand where they came from. Like maybe, something really horrendous or whatever. All usually, I love this statement from A Course in Miracles. I don't know if you've ever heard of that book, but that book is actually a, a pathway to forgiveness, which I did a couple of times. It's a year-long study, but basically there are lessons every day. And I won't go into the details of the book again. Anybody can look that up, A Course in Miracles. But basically, one of the premises is every act is either a call for love or an extension of love. So you're either full of love and you're extending it, or you're calling love to yourself, which is really in a way a call for healing. And if you really see that everything is in either space, someone who you need to forgive is calling for love. That helps. It helps to build the compassion and the empathy. You can so if I needed to forgive myself personally, I would use the Ho'oponopono because that resonates with me and it works so well. I will say I have a friend recently, a very old friend from my 20s, who had gone through a series of very difficult things. And she actually had a breakdown and ended up being hospitalized and medicated and was in pretty bad shape. And I stayed in touch with her. And one day I suggested she do the Ho'oponopono. And she did. She did a 45-minute round. She just followed it from YouTube. And it was just following a man who was saying the prayer over and over again in a very gentle way. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you, for 45 minutes. And you just sit and listen and follow. And she did that. And for the beginning, she did it twice a day. Her whole mental state lifted. She returned to herself in such a big way. Um, it was very healing for her.
Wow.
I was impressed. I was because I mean I could just tell immediately just from talking to her on the phone. Her voice was back, her energy was back. She started doing things. It was very remarkable, the transformation, and so that's her go-to. And the the doctor who facilitated bringing it out into the Western modern world who was a psychologist. He used it for all these prison inmates in this high security prison. He wouldn't meet with them. He would just do the Ho'oponopono prayer. He was the psychologist for the inmates, and he never went and talked to them. He would do Ho'oponopono. He's Hawaiian. He would do it every day. That security prison went from everybody being chained, walking around with their chains and so forth, to getting unchained, to starting projects like gardening and cooking, etc., being able to leave because of good behavior. Eventually, his whole unit, there wasn't anybody there. He systematically they just all healed and left.
Mhm.
And then physical healings are impressive too with that. So this is not about Ho'oponopono. This is about forgiveness, but
Sure.
I find it very powerful and I like it.
You know what I
But
do look at, Martha, in one regard with the forgiveness. Now, we're doing it to forgive somebody else, maybe ourselves, but if you are forgiving somebody else, aren't you also forgiving yourself for allowing the other person to affect you, control you? Because they already did what they're going to do. They're already gone. They don't care anymore. They've already moved on, whatever it might be. But let's say somebody's still marinating over it, still dealing with it. It's almost as if all of these, especially the Ho'oponopono prayer, is you got to forgive yourself for allowing that to happen, for allowing them to control your energy by giving them space in your head because of the situation and not having forgiven them yet. And it's also to say something happens, usually it takes two people if it's a relationship related kind of thing. It's different if somebody, a criminal did something, you don't even know them and it was just one of those things. But there's also forgiveness in allowing somebody else to do that to you
mhm,
and let it affect you
yes, and if you change the language immediately, like they're doing it to me,
for you.
well, it's that life is moving through me, for me, in the form of this person acting this way. But when it gets down to it, there's so many things that we can be unhappy about. We felt like we had a low blow at work or with our education or our family. Maybe a parent was really a bad parent. The list can just go on forever.
Sure.
But if life is happening through us for our benefit, in trusting that, um, you don't even really see the person doing it to you. That's the shift in the perception. So again, back to A Course in Miracles, which I did because I couldn't forgive somebody. And they were an important person in my life, not out of choice, but circumstances, family, and all that. And I put the photograph on my altar and just said, every time I look at that photograph, I'm going to forgive her. And I kept doing it and doing it because it drove me crazy that I was obsessing over this person. And then it occurred to me to do A Course in Miracles. Because I started to forgive her, somehow I was drawn to the Course. But the Course also says that forgiveness, and it's really about forgiveness, that ultimately we move to a place of total acceptance where there really isn't even any need to forgive because you don't take things personally anymore. That person didn't really do it to me. That's that person acting out their stuff. And they used me, or as their prop in their movie to act out their stuff. And I'm not taking it personally because it's on them, really. But if I can shift my perception in a way, and basically, of course, says forgiveness is a shift in perception that removes the blocks to love's presence. So if you're hating someone, you're obviously not in a perception of allowing your love. If you remove that by forgiving them, it's almost like forgiving life, because if life is moving through me and we draw experiences to ourselves, maybe we're forgiving life for bringing us this really difficult experience. And if there's trust, we know that we can handle that experience and that somehow there was something in it for us, of value. Maybe it was to learn a deeper level of forgiveness, because once you learn how to really forgive, you've got that for the rest of your life. Because when you're free, when you finally become free through forgiveness, you don't want to go back to that with a new circumstance, so you're just going to forgive and forgive and forgive. It's kind of like cleaning house. I mean, really, the practice, like gratitude, is like, you practice gratitude every day. You can practice forgiveness every day. What do I need to forgive today? you
Hmm.
know
Never
what's
thought
what's
of it that way.
flowing through me that needs forgiveness today? you
Hmm.
know so
It
yeah.
could be even the littlest thing. Like this sounds really stupid, but I had plants in my office. They died a year or two ago. Never got around to replacing them, so I did replace them. I have one that's just not doing well. I almost feel bad. Like I was like, sorry. It's got vibration, different vibration than us. But interesting what you said, Martha, in that if it's somebody that you need to forgive, if you look at it in such a way that they're just acting out, you were the next person that was walking by, or you maybe in that relationship for years where they were just acting out. It has really not a lot to do with you. Again, relationships are a two-way street. But if you take a look at why they're acting out, maybe there's a reason. Maybe it goes back to their childhood. And if you can identify that reason, maybe more justification for what they're doing. Again, you don't condone it, but you were just that person that was there that they acted out on. It's an
Well,
interesting.
you might be their scapegoat. They might choose you to be that person. Like, for instance, a family member, it's really easy to become a scapegoat of somebody else in the family, because you're always there, and in a way you always will be there, and so people feel safer sometimes.
Sure.
But also, there's a dynamic until we really let go of that victim attitude. Oh, they did it to me. Because as long as we're engaging as if we're a victim and somebody was the tyrant who did this thing to me, maybe I want to perpetuate that dynamic, because it gives me a way to not take responsibility. And in a way, I get something out of it. So we also have to drop that. And I think that this practice really gets you to a place where those kinds of relationships start dropping out of your life.
Right.
Because once you've done the practice, it's like you don't really need that anymore. You learned the lesson, you move on. New things will come up that need forgiveness and so forth. But yeah, you don't hold on to people in your life where you've got that dynamic going on, because you've moved beyond it.
And ultimately, and some of us do believe it, that things happen for a reason. There's a lesson to be learned from it. There's a takeaway. Sometimes we don't know what it is. Someday we will. Maybe it's part of the plan, whatever it might be. But if you look at it in that way, um, now to move on. That was that. There's a lesson there. Figure it out some point. I don't condone what you did. I just move on. Um, Powerful stuff. I mean, I've talked about forgiveness before, but you go layers deeper, but in such a good way, and a different perspective looking at things. And I got to imagine when you work with somebody to transform their life as a life coach, it's kind of that perspective that you give them. That's what I'm
Oh yeah, I'm just there to remind them of what they already know deep down.
yeah,
Is, you know, again, even as I said, like resentment is just like a shield over our hearts that needs to be removed. And the love is going to be there, because that's what we're made of. And for sure, it's there. If you can't feel it, it's because you've got too much holding it, holding it tight, holding it in or back or whatever. So I'm just there to remind you and to give tools for how to basically remove these blockages to a larger perspective or a deeper perception, however you want to say it. And but then the person has their own natural ability. We all do.
mm. A lot of people say live in love, and that's really what you're talking about. Doesn't mean that you have to love the person that you have to forgive, but send them love, send them positivity. And I think a lot of times, when there's hurt, there's scars. So it's almost as if You mentally have to go to a cosmetic surgeon and remove those scars before you can get to the love layer, and then let go, and then let go. What's your website, by the way, Martha?
It's healthlife.solutions.
Gotcha. Always great talking with you. Lots of great viewpoints, and challenging topic to talk about today, but Ho'oponopono. I'm going to go there. I got to check that out. I'm really intrigued.
Oh, good. The next time we talk, you have to tell me what you think.
I'm going to give it a shot within the next couple of days, if not later today. And just Google it and find somebody doing the prayer and just repeat. Does that sound what it is? Really, basically, that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, there's interviews there too, like with Dr. Lin, who, I did a workshop with him before he passed, and Marna, who was really the woman who got a message from God, and she exposed the prayer basically to the Western world and said, we need to share this, because it was something that they held in their own tradition very privately. And so there are interviews with them, and there's a lot of different things there. I could send you some of my favorites.
Well, let's talk about that next time after I Ho'oponopono.
All right.
Tell my friends, tonight I'm gonna Ho'oponopono. Really? Yes, I am. And it's a good thing.
You can say, I'm gonna Ho'oponopono you.
Yes. Martha, thank you so much.
Because you're really Ho'oponoponoing yourself.
Exactly right. All right, we'll talk soon. Thanks again.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.